The gleaming headquarters of Nexus Robotics stretched toward the San Francisco sky, all glass, steel, and promises of the future. I adjusted my blazer, vintage Chanel, a rare splurge from my first patent sale, and approached the security desk. Name? The guard barely glanced up from his tablet. Dr. Elena Ramirez. His fingers paused over the screen. Ah yes, Mrs. Ramirez. We were sorry to hear about Miguel. He was well liked here. I blinked, confused. I'm sorry. Miguel Ramirez? Our maintenance supervisor? He looked at me with practiced sympathy. The invitation was a courtesy, given his years of service. Mr. Torres is very generous that way. Mr. Torres, my son David's new last name, taken from his father's side after the divorce. A choice he made at 18 when venture capitalists suggested that David Torres would attract more funding than David Ramirez. There seems to be a misunderstanding, I started. No need to be modest, another guard cut in, printing out a badge. Miguel always said his wife was smart as a whip. Here you go, maintenance staff family. The service entrance is around the back, but given the occasion, you can use the main door. I took the badge, 30 years of academic politics keeping my face neutral. The badge photo wasn't even me, probably Miguel's actual widow. The ceremony starts in an hour, the first guard added kindly. Though if you want to help the cleaning crew with final preparations, I'm sure they welcome a familiar face. My phone buzzed, the latest Nexus prototype, given to me by David months ago for beta testing. He did mention I designed its core neural network architecture. Mom, where are you? The press is starting to arrive. Just getting my security badge, mio, I replied in Spanish, watching the guard's expression shift at my familiar tone with the company's founder. What? I left instructions. Never mind. Jenny's coming down to get you. Moments later, Jennifer Chen, David's CTO and fiancé, burst through the security doors. Alana, I am so sorry. These idiots. It's fine. I smiled, remembering similar moments throughout my career. Though I think we need to update their database. Jenny's eyes narrowed at my badge. Who's Maria Ramirez? Apparently, my doppelganger. I couldn't help but chuckle, though I suspect she's actually Miguel's widow. This isn't funny, Elena. You're our keynote speaker. The guard's head snapped up. About that, I said mildly, perhaps we should discuss the presentation order. I had some thoughts about introducing the quantum processing matrix before. Dr. Ramirez? The first guard's voice cracked. As in, Dr. Elena Ramirez? The pioneer of adaptive robotic neural networks? Jenny finished. The holder of 23 patents in quantum computing. The woman who literally wrote the textbook most of our engineers studied. Yes, that Dr. Ramirez. But the second guard gestured helplessly. Latina? A woman? Not wearing a lab coat, I suggested. Tell me, which of these made you assume I was here to clean rather than speak? Jenny was already on her tablet, fingers flying. I'm pulling up your actual credentials. Though honestly, we shouldn't need to prove. It's fine, I touched her arm. Let's focus on the launch. Though perhaps we should discuss why my son's company still has these institutional biases. The guards were now frantically pulling up my profile on their screens. I caught glimpses of my academic photos, conference presentations, honorary degrees. Their faces cycled through shock, horror, and mortification. Doctor, professor, we didn't. No, I finished. That's rather the point, isn't it? The elevator opened and David stepped out. At 32, my son was every inch the Silicon Valley wonderkind in his designer suit and carefully cultivated stubble. He froze when he saw the scene. Mom? What's going on? Your security team was just giving me my badge. I held up the misidentified ID. Apparently, I've been promoted from MIT professor to maintenance staff widow. David's face darkened. What? I specifically told HR. To handle it? I raised an eyebrow. Like you handled dropping Ramirez from your name. The guards looked like they wanted to melt into their desks. Mom, David's voice dropped. We discussed this. The investors. Suggested Torres would open more doors. I switched to Spanish again. And yet here I am, still opening them myself, one assumption at a time. Jenny, bless her, jumped in. The press is waiting. Elena, I had your proper credentials reprinted. And David. She gave her fiancé a sharp look. We're discussing the security protocols tomorrow. As we walked to the elevator, I heard one guard frantically calling HR. The other was staring at his screen, probably reading about the woman who just developed their company's core technology. I'm sorry, David said quietly as the elevator rose. I should have made sure that everyone knew who I was. I smiled. Mio, I've spent 30 years being underestimated. It's not your job to prevent it. But it is my job to fix it when I see it, he insisted, especially in my own company. Our company, Jenny corrected, and Elena's right. The fact that our security made these assumptions, we have work to do. The elevator opened onto the executive floor, where reporters and photographers were already gathering. I saw the moment they recognized me, not as David Torres's mother, but as Dr. Elena Ramirez. The whispers started immediately. Is that really her? The quantum computing pioneer? I studied her papers in grad school. David straightened his shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, he addressed the crowd. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, my mother, Dr. Elena Ramirez. The room burst into applause. A young reporter pushed forward. Dr. Ramirez, is it true that Nexus's new quantum processing architecture is based on your theoretical work from 20 years ago? Actually, I smiled. It's based on the work I did last summer. The theoretical papers? Those I wrote while this one was learning to walk. I nudged David. Wait, another reporter called out. You're David Torres's mother? But his name is a story for another time, David cut in firmly. Today we're here to launch the next generation of adaptive robotics. Technology that wouldn't exist without the brilliant woman standing next to me. I squeezed his hand, feeling the tension in his fingers. Mio, I whispered. It's okay. Sometimes the best way to change minds is to let them see their own assumptions fall apart. The silence that followed was broken only by Alexander's happy chatter about the robots in my R&D lab. Margaret Ashworth's perfect Botox couldn't quite hide her horror, while Richard seemed to be having trouble breathing. But you're, Margaret gestured helplessly at my simple dress. Asian, female, not dripping in obvious wealth? I adjusted Alexander on my hip. Tell me, which of those things made you assume I was the help? Mom, Michael stepped forward, looking mortified. I am so sorry. I should have said something when they started. It's fine, I assured him. Though perhaps now would be a good time to tell them about the other surprise. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. Oh yes, Mom, would you like to do the honors? Grammy's house is so big. Alexander announced before I could speak. We can all live there together. Richard found his voice. What is he talking about? Well, I said mildly, when Oakwood Estates came up for sale last month, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. The mansion has enough room for Sarah and Michael's family, plus a separate wing for me when I'm not traveling. Oakwood Estates? Margaret's voice rose an octave. But that's next door to us. Actually, Sarah added, it's the entire gated community, isn't it, Mom? Not just the mansion. I nodded. The investment opportunity was too good to pass up, though I might need to make some changes to the Homeowners Association leadership. I hear they've been rather discriminatory in their membership policies. Richard swayed slightly. He was on that leadership board, and we both knew about the unofficial policies that had kept out certain types of residents. But we've lived here for generations, Margaret protested. The Ashworths were founding members. And now the Chen family will be too, I said simply. Unless, of course, you have objections to having neighbors who look like me. Michael cleared his throat. We're moving in next week. Sarah and I thought it would be good for Alexander to be closer to both his grandmothers. Both? Margaret's voice was faint. But the social committees, the country club. Oh, that reminds me, I shifted Alexander to my other hip. I should mention that Chen Technologies pension fund just acquired a controlling interest in the country club. We'll be making some changes there too. More inclusive membership policies, for starters. Richard's face had gone from purple to gray. The club has certain standards. Yes, I agreed. And those standards are about to change, just like the seating arrangement at this party. I gestured to the tables I was supposed to have been setting up. Alexander, sweetheart, how would you like to help Grammy rearrange things? I'm thinking one big table where everyone sits together. No more kids' table? He asked hopefully. No more any tables, Sarah confirmed. No more artificial divisions of any kind. Margaret made one last attempt. But the social hierarchy, the proper order of things, is changing, I finished for her. Just like it changed when a young immigrant woman with a computer science degree decided she could compete with the tech giants. Just like it changed when that woman's daughter married your son, despite your initial reservations. We didn't know, Richard said weakly. That's the problem. Sarah's voice was firm. You didn't bother to know. You just assumed. About Mom, about our cultural heritage, about everything that didn't fit your narrow view of proper. But now you do know. I set Alexander down gently. So we have two choices. You can continue clinging to your outdated prejudices, in which case you'll find your social and business circles becoming increasingly limited. Or, Margaret whispered. Or you can join us at one big table, I smiled. Where your grandson can grow up proud of all his heritage, not just the parts you deem acceptable. Alexander tugged at Margaret's designer skirt. Grandma Ashworth, want to see the robots in Grammy Wise lab? They're so cool, and she lets me help program them. Something shifted in Margaret's face as she looked down at her grandson. Perhaps it was the genuine excitement in his voice, or the way he moved easily between his two worlds. He's learning programming, she asked softly. Among other things, I nodded. He's quite talented. Like his father, he has a gift for bridging different worlds. Michael put his arm around Sarah. That's what we're hoping for with the move. A chance for Alexander to have the best of both his heritages, both his families. Richard looked at the clipboard he tried to hand me earlier, then at his grandson. Perhaps we could start by rearranging these tables. The press conference became more than just a product launch. It turned into a moment of reckoning. Standing at the podium, I could see the exact moment the industry journalists realized they'd been reporting on my technology for years without knowing its true origin. The quantum processing matrix that powers Nexus's new line, I explained, pulling up the holographic display, was conceived 20 years ago in my MIT lab. Back then, they called it Ramirez's folly. David stepped forward. They called it impossible. Until now. The neural network diagram floated above us, complex and beautiful. In the front row, I spotted the editor who'd once rejected my paper, claiming the math was too ambitious for someone of your background. Dr. Ramirez, a young reporter, raised her hand. Why did you choose to develop this technology through your son's company rather than the traditional academic route? I smiled. Perhaps because Nexus was the first to see me as a scientist first, and not just a demographic checkbox. That's not entirely true, Mom, David interrupted, taking the microphone. I need to say something. Jenny shot him a warning look, but he continued. When I started Nexus, I changed my name from Ramirez to Torres. I told myself it was a business decision. The truth? He looked at me. I was afraid. Afraid that the prejudices that had held you back would hold me back too. The room fell silent. But today, watching security mistake my mother, the literal inventor of our core technology, for maintenance staff, I realize I've been part of the problem. He turned to the cameras. Effective immediately, I'm changing my name back to David Ramirez. And Nexus is launching a new fellowship program for underrepresented engineers, named after the woman who taught me that innovation doesn't care about your last name. I felt tears threatening. Me-yo. The Elena Ramirez Fellowship, Jenny announced, stepping up. Full funding for minority women in quantum computing. Because one brilliant mind overlooked is one too many. The press erupted with questions. Through the chaos, I saw the security guards from earlier, standing at attention by the doors. Their badges had been modified, security team, protecting innovation without prejudice. One more thing, I said into the microphone. To the young Latina girls watching this, the ones being told to set their sights lower, to be more realistic about their dreams. I pulled up the final slide, showing my original equations from 30 years ago. This is what realistic looks like. And if anyone tries to tell you otherwise, tell them to check their assumptions. They might find they're running on an outdated operating system. The laughter that rippled through the room carried the weight of recognition. How many others have faced similar barriers, similar assumptions? Later, at the reception, the security guards approached me. Dr. Ramirez, the first one said, We've submitted our resignations. Don't, I replied. Stay, learn, help us build something better. But we assumed. Exactly, you assumed. Now you know better. That's how change happens. One corrected assumption at a time. David joined us, his new badge proudly displaying Ramirez. Mom, the board wants to name you Chief Innovation Officer. Part-time, I stipulated. I still have students to teach, future minds to unlock. Future minds who won't have to change their names to be taken seriously, he said softly. Looking around the room, at the press now eagerly covering the human story behind the technology, at Jenny's proud smile, at the security team's transformed understanding, I saw something more valuable than any patent or prototype. I saw change happening in real time. You know, Mio, I said, sometimes the most revolutionary technology isn't in the chips or the quantum processors. No, it's in the moments when we force people to upgrade their thinking, to debug their prejudices. David laughed. Trust you to turn discrimination into a coding problem. Everything's a coding problem, I winked. Some just require a more human touch to solve. And there, in a room full of next-generation technology, the real innovation wasn't in the machines at all. It was in the minds beginning to compute a new kind of future, one where names like Ramirez belonged on patents, podiums, and history books. One where assumptions get debugged, one story at a time. The morning sun filtered through Rose Garden Manor's restored Victorian windows, casting intricate shadows across the marble floors I'd personally selected from a quarry in Tuscany. 20 years of careful restoration had transformed this once derelict estate into the most sought-after wedding venue in New England. Now my own daughter would be married here. If we could get past this morning's meeting. Mama, please don't say anything when she does it, Sophia had begged over the phone. Miranda Hartley is the best wedding planner in Boston. We're lucky she agreed to take us on. I adjusted my simple linen dress, comfortable enough for the hands-on work I still did around the property, and checked my watch. The famous Miranda was running late. From the entrance hall came the click of expensive heels and a cultured voice dripping with authority. This simply won't do. The Oriental rugs need to be Persian, not Pakistani. The owner will notice immediately. I bit back a smile. I'd chosen those rugs specifically for their durability, not their provenance. 20 years in the hospitality business had taught me that practicality often trumped prestige. And who are you? Miranda Hartley's perfectly highlighted head swiveled toward me. Her assistant, struggling with multiple portfolios, nearly crashed into her. Never mind, she cut me off, thrusting her designer bag into my hands. The floors need mopping before Mrs. Shen arrives. She's very particular, I hear. These new money types always are. New money. I suppressed a laugh. The traditional jade bangle on my wrist was a 400-year-old family heirloom that had survived the Cultural Revolution, hidden in my grandmother's hemline. Mrs. Chen is, I tried again, going to be here any minute, Miranda snapped. Less talking, more cleaning. There's a mop closet down that hall. Teresa. She turned to her assistant. Start setting up in the main ballroom. And for heaven's sake, hide those awful Pakistani rugs. I watched them click-clack toward my meticulously restored ballroom, Miranda's running commentary echoing off the walls. Everything must be perfect. The mother of the bride is some tech executive who got lucky with crypto or something. Probably hasn't seen real quality in her life. The real quality of my MIT engineering degree and 3 successful IPOs before age 40 might beg to differ. My phone buzzed. Sophia. Mama, is she there? Please tell me everything's okay. Your Mrs. Hartley just arrived, I said in Mandarin, knowing it would drive Miranda crazy not understanding. She's very efficient. She thinks you're the cleaning staff, doesn't she? She handed me her bag and told me to mop. Mama? Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm actually enjoying myself. I switched back to English as Miranda emerged from the ballroom. Yes, the floors will be spotless for Mrs. Chen's arrival. Miranda shot me an approving look. At least someone here understands standards. Teresa, where are those vendor portfolios? I slipped into the mop closet, my private office actually deliberately designed to look utilitarian from the outside. Inside was a state-of-the-art command center where I monitored every aspect of the venue's operations. On one screen, I watched Miranda terrorize her assistant while rearranging my carefully curated furniture. A discreet knock interrupted my surveillance. "Mrs. Chen?" It was James, my actual head of maintenance. "The real cleaning crew is here, but Mrs. Hartley thinks I'm doing their job." I grinned. "Let them start in the East Wing. I'm conducting an experiment in human nature." James, who'd been with me since I bought this place as a crumbling ruin, tried not to smile. "Like that time the health inspector assumed you were a kitchen helper?" He learned a lot about proper food handling certification that day. I checked another screen. "And it looks like our wedding planner is about to learn something too." Miranda's voice carried through the security feed. "These light fixtures are all wrong. Probably some cheap Asian imports. We'll need to replace them before the owner sees them." Those cheap Asian imports were hand-blown Venetian glass, selected during a personal visit to Murano. The artisan had come out of retirement specifically for this commission. "Actually," Teresa ventured, "I think those air." What would you know about quality? Miranda dismissed her. "Just like this venue. Beautiful bones, but no real understanding of true luxury. What can you expect when new money tries to play in old money spaces?" I checked my watch again. Time to put Miranda out of her misery. I speed-dialed Sophia. "Ready for the show, sweetheart?" "Be nice, Mama. We still need her to plan the wedding." "I'll be professional." I smoothed my dress. "I'm just going to help her update her assumptions." I stepped out of my mock closet, just as Miranda was instructing Teresa to do something about that Asian woman dawdling in the hallway. "Actually," I said in my boardroom voice, "that Asian woman was just reviewing the security footage of the last 15 minutes. Fascinating viewing." Miranda froze. "Security footage?" "Including your comments about cheap Asian imports, new money, and Pakistani rugs." I smiled. "Though I should correct you, those rugs are actually Pakistani. I chose them personally." "You chose?" "Well, it is my house." I extended my hand. "Grace Chen, owner of Rose Garden Manor, CEO of Chen Global Ventures, and mother of your bride-to-be." The color drained from Miranda's face. Behind her, Teresa looked like she wanted to disappear into the Pakistani rug. But you were dressed comfortably for a morning of venue management." I gestured around the hall. "One doesn't restore a historic property by sitting behind a desk. Though I do that too, when I'm not being handed designer bags and cleaning instructions." Miranda Hartley's perfectly glossed lips opened and closed without sound. Her assistant Teresa had the good sense to look mortified while frantically tapping on her tablet, probably Googling me now. "Mrs. Chen," Teresa squeaked. "Your profile. You're on Ford's cover this month." Was I? I feigned surprise. "I've been too busy overseeing the restoration of our new East Wing. We're adding a koi pond. Very oriental." I couldn't resist the small dig. Miranda finally found her voice. I don't understand." The cleaning staff said I was in the mop closet." I pressed a hidden panel, revealing my high-tech office. "I find it useful to maintain certain misconceptions. You learn a lot about people when they think you're invisible." The wedding planner's face shifted from white to green as the implications of her earlier comments sank in. "Sophia warned me you were the best in Boston," I continued mildly, "though she didn't mention your unique perspectives on Asian imports and new money." "Mrs. Chen, please." Miranda stepped forward. "I can explain." "Mom." Sophia's voice rang through the hall. My daughter rushed in, impeccable in her prosecutor's suit, followed by her fiancé James and his parents, the Whitfields. "Perfect timing, sweetheart." I smiled. Mrs. Hartley was just sharing her thoughts on venue decoration. Sophia took in the scene, Miranda's distress, Teresa's frantic Googling, and my too innocent expression. "Mama, what did you do?" "Nothing, darling. Just a small lesson in hasty assumptions." Margaret Whitfield, James's mother, stepped forward with the same blue blood grace that had initially made me wary. But she'd surprised us all, embracing Sophia and me with genuine warmth from day one. "Grace," she said now, eyes twinkling, "please tell me you didn't let Miranda do her usual routine." "You know Mrs. Hartley?" I asked. "Unfortunately." Margaret's smile was razor sharp. "She did my niece's wedding. Spent the entire time explaining how nouveau riche everyone was compared to her vision of real society." Miranda looked like she might faint. Although Margaret continued, I don't recall her criticizing the venue owner to their face. That's new. Oh, she didn't know it was my face, I said cheerfully. She was too busy handing me her bag and commenting on my cheap Asian taste. James groaned. Mrs. Chen, I am so sorry. Don't be, I touched his arm. You and your mother have never made Sophia or me feel anything but welcome. Unlike some people who measure worth by perceived pedigree. Miranda drew herself up. Clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should start over, I suggested, with fewer assumptions about Asian imports and cleaning staff. Sophia stepped in. Mom, remember what we discussed about being diplomatic? I'm being very diplomatic, sweetheart. I haven't even mentioned the security footage yet. Security footage? Miranda's voice rose an octave. Standard procedure, I shrugged. Every interaction in the venue is recorded. For quality control, you understand. Speaking of which, those cheap light fixtures, the artisan who made them is flying in next month to create matching pieces for the East Wing. Would you like to meet him? He rarely comes out of retirement, but for his old friend Grace. I let the sentence hang. Teresa's tablet chimed. Mrs. Hartley, I have Mrs. Chen's full profile here. She's on the board of the Museum of Fine Arts and the Symphony. And this venue, Margaret added smoothly, which she transformed from ruins into the most exclusive wedding location in New England. Though apparently, it needs better rugs. Miranda swayed slightly. I should go. Actually, Sophia said firmly, you should stay. Because despite everything, you're the best wedding planner in Boston. And this wedding needs to be perfect. She turned to me. Right, Mama? I studied Miranda Hartley's face, seeing beyond the prejudices to the fear beneath. How many times had she felt the need to prove herself in a world that judged too quickly? Wasn't that what I'd been doing all my life? You're right, I said finally. Mrs. Hartley should stay. After all, planning a wedding is about creating something beautiful together. Though perhaps with fewer assumptions about who belongs where. Relief flooded Miranda's face. Mrs. Chen, I cannot apologize enough. Then don't, I cut in. Show me instead. Show me your vision for my daughter's wedding. Just remember, those Pakistani rugs stay. Margaret laughed. And I insist on seeing this security footage at some point. Ladies' lunch next week, I suggested. I know a lovely Asian fusion place. Very new money. As everyone relaxed into planning mode, I caught Sophia's grateful smile. My brilliant daughter, who'd never let prejudice stop her from becoming a prosecutor, who was marrying into old money but never forgot her roots. Mama, she whispered in Mandarin, you're terrible. No, daughter, I replied in the same language, watching Miranda pretend not to squirm. I'm educational. Over the next 2 hours, Miranda Hartley underwent what I can only describe as a professional metamorphosis. Every time she started to make a sweeping statement about traditional elegance, she'd catch my eye and quickly recalibrate. Perhaps, she said carefully, reviewing fabric swatches, we could incorporate some elements from both families' heritage. You mean like these? I pressed another hidden panel, revealing a climate-controlled display of vintage silk gyeongsams. My grandmother's collection. The embroidery techniques are rather oriental. Teresa stifled a laugh. She'd relaxed considerably since the initial revelation, proving to be quite knowledgeable when not being steamrolled by her boss. Mrs. Chen, Miranda ventured, these are museum quality. Yes, they are. Just like those cheap Asian imports lighting your way, I smiled sweetly. Amazing what you notice when you actually look past your first assumptions. Margaret Whitfield was thoroughly enjoying herself. Grace, darling, remember when the country club tried to serve you in the kitchen? Right after I bought it, I laughed. The manager nearly had a stroke when the new owner he'd been avoiding turned out to be the woman he directed to the service entrance. Miranda's face flushed. I seem to be in distinguished company when it comes to making terrible mistakes. The mistake isn't the problem, I said quietly. It's refusing to learn from it. Sophia, who'd been reviewing table arrangements, looked up. Like that judge who thought I was the interpreter, who now reports to you as district attorney, I reminded her. Life has a way of rearranging assumptions. Speaking of arrangements, Teresa interjected. I've been researching traditional Chinese wedding elements. The double happiness symbol could be beautifully incorporated into the Pakistani rugs, I suggested innocently. Miranda actually laughed. I deserve that. though I maintain that Persian would have been more expensive. Yes, more practical for a venue hosting 200 events a year. No, I pulled up the Manor's financial projections on my office screens. Sometimes true luxury is knowing when practicality trumps pretense. Looking at the numbers, Miranda's professional mask cracked completely. These profit margins are extraordinary. How did you? By remembering that I'm not just creating beautiful weddings, I'm running a business. I gestured around. Every choice, from the Pakistani rugs to the Italian marble, balances elegance with efficiency, something a truly excellent wedding planner should understand. She met my eyes. I'm beginning to. Sophia touched my arm. Mama, stop teaching and start planning. I'm getting married in 3 months. Actually, Miranda straightened her shoulders. I have some ideas. If Mrs. Chen, if Grace would be willing to trust me after. After assuming I was the help, I finished. Consider it a teaching moment. Show me your vision, Miranda. Just remember. The rugs stay, everyone tourist. Later, as the Whitfields left and Miranda and Teresa packed up their extensively revised plans, my daughter lingered. You enjoyed that too much, she accused in Mandarin. Me? I answered innocently in the same language. I was just being educational. You're always educational, Ma. That's why I love you. She hugged me. Though maybe next time, warn the wedding planner that the venue owner might be wandering around in casual clothes. And miss these valuable learning opportunities, I switched back to English as Miranda approached. Mrs. Chen. Grace, she said formally. I've learned more about true elegance today than in 20 years of planning society weddings. Good. I handed her back her designer bag. Because my daughter deserves a wedding planner who sees beauty in all its forms, not just the expected ones. After they left, I stood in my restored entrance hall, running my hand along the Pakistani rug that had sparked such assumptions. 20 years ago, I'd stood in the same spot, surrounded by ruins, while real estate agents tried to talk me out of buying a hopeless case. Now the hopeless case hosted the most exclusive events in New England, and my daughter would be married here, surrounded by both her cultures, both her families, and yes, those practical Pakistani rugs. Some might call it new money success. I called it the American dream, built one careful choice and one corrected assumption at a time. And if some people needed a little educational assistance in updating their worldview, well, that was just part of the service at Rose Garden Manor. Even if it wasn't listed in the brochure. The Wellington Club hadn't changed in 30 years. Same manicured lawns, same colonial facade, same subtle air of exclusivity that had once made me feel so small. But I wasn't the same nervous young programmer who'd first walked through these doors, clutching a membership application and daring to dream. Now I walked up those marble steps in Valentino, my heels worth more than my first year's salary at IBM. The morning headlines were still buzzing about Quantum Dynamics' latest acquisition, my 4th successful merger this year. My son's wedding would be the social event of the season. If I could get past the door. Staff entrance is around back, the doorman said without looking up. Service vehicles in the designated area only. I glanced at his nameplate. Mr. Phillips, I'm required to use the service entrance. He cut me off, finally looking up with practiced disdain. Policy hasn't changed in 50 years. I smiled. No, it hasn't. That's why Section 3, Paragraph 2 of the membership bylaws specifically prohibits staff from interrupting members without due cause. I helped write that revision 20 years ago. His eyes widened slightly, but years of professional snobbery held firm. Ma'am, I don't know what you've been told, but this is a private event. The Whitmore Chen wedding. Yes, I said pleasantly, my son Michael's wedding. I'm Linda Chen, though you might know me better as the L. Chen on your paycheck. The blood drained from his face. Ms. Chen? Mrs. I corrected. Though technically, it's Dr. Chen. The PhD came before the billions. I reached past him to open the door he should have held. Don't worry about announcing me. I know my way around. Inside, the club hummed with pre-wedding activity. Staff members who actually knew me nodded respectfully. The newer ones did double takes, their assumptions visibly recalibrating. Mom. Michael appeared, handsome in his morning suit. You're early. Good thing. I kissed his cheek. Had to give the new doorman a civics lesson. My son's face darkened. He didn't. Nothing I haven't handled before. I straightened his tie. Though you might remind your future mother-in-law that staff screening falls under her duties as club president. Catherine Whitmore's voice rang out behind us. Linda. Already causing trouble. I turned to embrace her, our laughter genuine. Catherine and I had bonded over being the only female CEOs in our children's private school parents association. She'd been my ally when certain board members suggested my tech money wasn't quite suitable for their institutional standards. Your new doorman needs updating, I told her. His assumptions are running on an obsolete operating system. Phillips? She sighed. Third complaint this month. Though you're the first billionaire he's tried to redirect to the service entrance. First Asian billionaire, you mean? I kept my tone light, but Catherine caught the edge. I'll handle it, she promised. This club's old enough to have traditions, not old enough to have prejudices. Speaking of traditions, Michael interrupted. Amanda's asking about the tea ceremony. Are we still? Your grandmother would rise from her grave if we skipped it, I assured him. The red envelopes are already prepared. Though I'm not sure how the club's old guard will handle seeing their precious ballroom transformed into a traditional Chinese ceremony space. They'll handle it the same way they handled your hostile takeover of their beloved Robinson Tech 15 years ago, Catherine grinned, with gritted teeth and forced smiles. Mother. Amanda Whitmore hurried over, radiant in pre-wedding excitement. I've been looking everywhere for you. The tea service arrived and I wanted to practice. She stopped. Oh, Mrs. Chen. I didn't see you come in. Apparently neither did the doorman, Catherine muttered. I hugged my future daughter-in-law. The service is beautiful, Amanda. My mother would have loved seeing her ceremonies honored like this. I just hope I don't mess it up, she worried. All those protocols. You'll do fine, I assured her. Though maybe we should practice where certain members can't have anxiety attacks over Chinese traditions infiltrating their sacred spaces. Too late, Michael nodded toward the door, where several elderly members were watching staff carry in ornate red and gold decorations. I think Mr. Harrison is having a stroke. Harrison. I raised an eyebrow. The same Harrison who tried to block my membership application because tech entrepreneurs aren't quite our sort. The very same, Catherine confirmed, though he changed his tune after your company bought out his family's manufacturing firm. Hostile takeover, I corrected sweetly. Very hostile. Very satisfying. Mom, Michael groaned. Please don't start any corporate wars at my wedding. Of course not, darling. I patted his cheek, though if Harrison wants to discuss the recent downturn in his company's stock. I let the threat hang playfully. A commotion at the entrance drew our attention. The doorman, Phillips, was arguing with someone. Ma'am, I've told you, vendors must use the service entrance. I don't care if you claim to be. That's the coordinator I hired from Hong Kong, I sighed. Excuse me while I prevent an international incident. Want me to handle it? Catherine offered. No, I smiled, straightening my Valentino. Some lessons are better delivered personally, especially when they involve updating outdated assumptions about Asian women in designer clothes. As I walked toward the door, I heard Amanda whisper to Michael, Your mom is kind of scary. Wait until you see her in the boardroom, my son replied proudly. This is her being nice. I approached Phillips, who was still lecturing my event coordinator about proper protocols. Mr. Phillips, I said in the voice that makes tech CEOs tremble. I believe we need to have another discussion about Section 3, Paragraph 2, perhaps somewhere more private. The doorman turned, recognized me, and achieved a shade of pale I hadn't seen since my last hostile takeover. Sometimes the best traditions are the ones you break, preferably in Valentino. Phillips followed me to the club's private boardroom like a man walking to his execution. I'd held my first board meeting here after buying out Harrison Industries, something the wood-paneled walls had probably never quite recovered from. Sit, I gestured to one of the leather chairs. We need to discuss your understanding of contemporary club demographics. Mrs. Chen, I assure you. Dr. Chen. I corrected again, taking my usual seat at the head of the table. And you were about to assure me that you're not prejudiced, that you treat everyone equally, that some of your best friends are Asian. He swallowed hard. Here's what's actually going to happen. I continued. You're going to apologize to Ms. Wang, my event coordinator, who, incidentally, handles royal weddings in Asia. Then you're going to spend the rest of the day making sure not a single other guest faces your assumptions. Yes, ma'am, Dr. Chen. And Phillips? I leaned forward. The next time you see someone who doesn't fit your image of a Wellington Club member, remember that they might sign your paycheck. A knock interrupted us. Harrison himself stood in the doorway, his face flushed with either embarrassment or anger, probably both. Linda, he managed through gritted teeth. I see you're making yourself at home. As usual. Charles, I smiled. Perfect timing. I was just explaining to Phillips here how the club has evolved since the days when you tried to blackball my membership. Harrison's flush deepened. Ancient history, water under the bridge. Like your company's stock price? I asked innocently. I noticed it's down 30% since you rejected that merger offer. Phillips looked between us, clearly wondering if he was witnessing the prelude to a corporate execution. You know, Harrison said tightly, some of us built our fortunes the traditional way. Not everyone needs to resort to hostile takeovers and technological shortcuts. I laughed, actually laughed. Traditional way? You mean inheriting daddy's company and running it into the ground? How's that working out for you? Now see here. No, you see here. I stood enjoying how both men instinctively stepped back. I built my empire from nothing. No inheritance, no old boys network, no country club connections. Just pure innovation and determination. And now my son is getting married in your precious club, which, by the way, I partially owned through that hostile takeover you're still bitter about. A new voice joined the conversation. Is everything all right here? Catherine stood in the doorway, every inch the club president despite her amused expression. Just catching up with old friends, I said smoothly. Charles was reminiscing about the good old days when he could keep people like me out. People like you. Catherine's voice sharpened. Successful entrepreneurs. Brilliant innovators. Or did you mean something else, Charles? Harrison tugged at his collar. Catherine, surely you understand. The traditions of this club are evolving, she finished firmly. Just like the business world. Though some adapt better than others. She glanced meaningfully at Harrison's designer watch. Last year's model, I noticed. The kind you buy when you're trying to maintain appearances on a declining income. Phillips, Catherine continued, I believe there are guests arriving who need proper greeting, with proper respect. The doorman fled gratefully. And Charles? She smiled sweetly. Wasn't there something you wanted to discuss with me about extending your membership payment schedule? Harrison's face went from red to white. I'll come back later. After you left, Catherine turned to me. You know, when Michael and Amanda first started dating, some members questioned whether we should allow new money to merge with old traditions. And now they're watching your Chinese tea ceremony preparations in terrified fascination, while their stock portfolios shrink and their children apply for jobs at tech companies. She laughed. Times change. Not fast enough for some, I said, thinking of Phillips and his assumptions. No, she agreed. But watching you take over their companies one by one has certainly accelerated the process. Ma. Michael appeared in the doorway. Amanda's parents are here, and the tea ceremony coordinator is asking for you. Duty calls, I told Catherine. Time to scandalize the old guard with some traditional Chinese customs. Give them something to really talk about, she winked. Walking through the club's hallowed halls, I passed dozens of portraits, all old white men in serious poses. Soon, my son's wedding photos would join them, showing a different kind of Wellington Club family. One where traditional Chinese ceremonies mixed with country club protocols, where old money met new innovation, and where assumptions got upgraded whether they liked it or not. Near the ballroom, I passed Harrison having an intense conversation with his financial advisor. From the snippets I caught, another company was considering a takeover bid. I made a mental note to have my team look into it. Hostile takeovers were so much more satisfying when they had a point to make. Mrs. Dr. Chen, Phillips called out nervously. Your grandson has arrived. I turned ready to correct him, then saw his face. He was testing himself, practicing a respect he should have shown earlier. Thank you, Phillips, I said. See, operating systems can be updated after all. The ballroom transformation was a masterpiece of cultural fusion. Red and gold lanterns hung alongside crystal chandeliers, while traditional calligraphy scrolls complemented the club's ancestral portraits. Ms. Wong had outdone herself. The space radiated both Wellington Club gravitas and Chinese ceremonial warmth. Magnificent, isn't it? Amanda's father, Richard Whitmore, joined me in surveying the room, though I heard Harrison nearly fainted when they started hanging the lanterns. Harrison faints at anything that wasn't here in 1950, I replied, including most of his company's remaining assets. Richard chuckled. I heard rumors about another takeover. Should I move my investment portfolio? Depends. How do you feel about technological shortcuts and new money? Before he could respond, Michael appeared with Amanda, both now dressed in traditional Chinese wedding attire. My son looked handsome in his red silk changshan, while Amanda wore a stunning kippah that had belonged to my mother. Mom, Michael whispered urgently, some of the older members are refusing to participate in the tea ceremony. They're saying it's not appropriate. I felt rather than saw Catherine intense beside me. But before either of us could speak, Richard Whitmore stepped forward. Not appropriate, he boomed in his best boardroom voice. I'd say what's not appropriate is refusing to honor the traditions of one of our most successful members. Or do I need to remind everyone about last quarter's stock performances? Around the room, several members suddenly found their shoes fascinating. Harrison, in particular, seemed very interested in his shoelaces. Besides, Richard continued, my daughter specifically chose to incorporate these ceremonies. Are you suggesting my Amanda has poor judgment? The power of old money defending new traditions. It was almost poetic. Perhaps, I added sweetly, those who find it difficult to adapt could wait in the library. I hear the bankruptcy notices make fascinating reading these days. Catherine barely suppressed her snort. The tea ceremony proceeded beautifully. Amanda handled every detail perfectly, showing proper respect to each elder. Even Harrison participated, though his hands shook slightly when accepting the tea from me, probably remembering that hostile takeover. Afterward, as the space was being reset for the Western ceremony, Phillips approached me again. Dr. Chen, there's a situation at the entrance. Another Asian vendor you've misdirected. He flushed. No, ma'am. There's a group of young tech entrepreneurs. They say they're your mentees, but they're not dressed quite. Ah, my startup incubator graduates. I smiled. Future billionaires, Phillips, might want to memorize their faces now. Save yourself trouble later. His expression suggested he was finally understanding the new world order. Mom? Michael touched my arm. Thank you. For not burning the place down when they disrespected you. For showing them a better way instead. I straightened his changshan. Revenge is good, son. Teaching is better. Just ask Harrison. I've been educating him about modern business practices for years, one hostile takeover at a time. Speaking of Harrison, Catherine joined us. He's requesting a private meeting next week, something about exploring merger possibilities. Finally admitting he needs a technological shortcut. I raised an eyebrow. Book it. I'll bring my checkbook and my sympathy. Looking around the transformed ballroom, where old money and new innovation mingled, where East met West, where tradition embraced change, I saw the future, not just of the Wellington Club, but of all the spaces that once thought they could exclude people like me. Phillips stood at attention, carefully checking every guest's credentials regardless of appearance. Harrison huddled with his financial advisors, probably calculating how much his pride would cost him in the upcoming merger. And my brilliant son stood with his beautiful bride, perfectly bridging two worlds that had once seemed impossibly far apart. You know, Catherine mused beside me, when you first joined the club, some members said it would never be the same. They were right, I replied, watching my startup mentees enter in their stylish but decidedly non-country club attire. It's better. After all, the best revenge isn't just success. It's success that forces others to evolve. Even if they have to be dragged into the future, one tea ceremony at a time. The annual Thompson Family Beach Week had always been tense, but this year, Diana Thompson crossed a line I couldn't ignore. As I watched my children, Lily and Jack, ages 10 and 8, trying to make their sleeping bags comfortable in the backseat of our SUV, I felt something inside me finally snap. Mom, why can't we sleep inside like Cooper and Madison? Lily asked, referring to her step-cousins who were currently settling into their luxurious ocean view rooms. I gripped the car door until my knuckles turned white, remembering Diana's words from an hour ago. Second marriage children don't count as real Thompson heirs. They can sleep in the car or go home. Your choice, Amanda. My husband Thomas was inside, supposedly confronting his mother about this latest cruelty, but I knew how these confrontations usually ended. Diana would cry about respecting family traditions, Thomas would cave, and nothing would change. 15 years of marriage had taught me that pattern all too well. Just for tonight, sweetie, I promised Lily that my blood was boiling. Things will be different tomorrow. Jack looked up from his Nintendo Switch, his small face serious. Is it because Grandma Diana hates us? My heart shattered. No, baby, she's set in her ways. What I didn't say was that Diana had never forgiven Thomas for marrying me after his first wife Kate's death. In Diana's eyes, I was the interloper who'd stolen her precious son, and my children were living proof of what she considered Thomas's betrayal of Kate's memory. Never mind that Kate had been my friend too, that she'd made Thomas promise to find happiness again before she passed. Never mind that I'd loved and raised Cooper, Kate's son, as my own for the past 15 years. To Diana, we were perpetual outsiders. I tucked the kids in as best I could, making sure they had their pillows and stuffed animals. Try to get some sleep. I need to go talk to Daddy about something important. As I walked toward the sprawling beach house, the legendary Thompson family property that had been the site of countless summers and holidays, I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for months. Inside was a truth that would shake Diana's perfectly curated world to its foundations. I found Thomas in the kitchen, his face drawn. Mom won't budge, he said before I could speak. She says it's her house and her rules. Is it, though? I placed the envelope on the granite countertop. Because I have something interesting here that suggests otherwise. Thomas frowned. What do you mean? Remember last month when we were helping clear out your father's old law office? I found something fascinating in his private files. I pulled out the documents, something about the real ownership of this beach house. Amanda, Thomas started, but I cut him off. Did you know your father never actually transferred the property to your mother? In fact, according to these papers, he left it in trust for all his grandchildren, specifically stating that any children from subsequent marriages would have equal rights. The color drained from Thomas's face. What? Your father must have known how Diana would behave after he was gone. He made sure to protect any future grandchildren from exactly this kind of discrimination. I spread the papers across the counter. The house legally belongs to Cooper, Lily, and Jack in equal shares. Diana's just been managing it as trustee, a position she's clearly abusing. Does she know about this? Not yet. I gathered the papers back into the envelope. But she's about to. We found Diana in the formal living room, holding court with Thomas's sister Patricia and her husband. The room still had the same nautical-themed decor I remember from my first visit 15 years ago. Everything perfectly preserved like a museum to the Thompson family's supposed superiority. Mother, Thomas's voice was firmer than usual. We need to talk about the sleeping arrangements. Diana waved her hand dismissively. I've already explained my position. This house has been in the Thompson family for generations. I won't have it overrun by your legal co-owners. I interrupted, pulling out the trust documents. Diana's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. What are you talking about? Dad's last will and testament, Thomas said, taking the papers from me. Specifically, his arrangements for this house. As Thomas explained the situation, I watched the color drain from Diana's face. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes wide with interest. She'd never approved of her mother's treatment of my children either. This is ridiculous, Diana sputtered. Harold would never. But he did, I cut in. He made sure all his grandchildren would be treated equally. Maybe he knew something about how things would play out after he was gone. Diana snatched the papers, her hands shaking as she read. This can't be legal. It's completely legal, Thomas said. Dad made sure of that. Which means you've been managing this property on behalf of all your grandchildren, including Lily and Jack. Making them sleep in the car isn't just cruel. It's a violation of your duties as trustee. The silence in the room was deafening. Patricia stood up, smoothing her designer pants. I'm going to help the children move their things to proper rooms, she announced. They can take a blue suite. It has an adjoining room perfect for cousins. Diana's face had gone from pale to red. You can't just. Actually, we can, I said quietly. But that's not all we found in Harold's papers. Thomas looked at me sharply. This part you didn't know about yet. There's a clause about trustee misconduct, I continued. If any trustee shows persistent bias or discrimination against any of the beneficiaries, They can be removed and replaced by majority vote of the adult beneficiary's parents. You wouldn't dare, Diana whispered. I thought about my children trying to sleep in our car, about years of snide comments and deliberate exclusion, about the pain in Jack's eyes when he asked if his grandmother hated them. Try me, I said. Now I'm going to get my children and bring them into their house. Tomorrow we can discuss how things are going to change around here. As I walked out to the car, I heard Diana's voice rising in protest. But for once I didn't care. The tables had finally turned, and it was time for the Thompson family beach house to live up to Harold's vision, a place where all his grandchildren could feel at home. I opened the car door, where Lily and Jack were still awake, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of Jack's game console. Come on, kids, I said, smiling. Great-Grandpa Harold left us a surprise. How do you feel about having your own suite with an ocean view? The wedding ceremony was beautiful, despite the tension simmering beneath the surface. Barbara sat rigidly in the front row, flinching every time I caught her eye. Her husband George kept glancing between us, clearly sensing something had changed in the carefully maintained power dynamic of our family. As Michael and Emma exchanged their vows, I noticed Barbara dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. For a moment, I almost felt guilty about the envelope burning a hole in my purse. Then I remembered the maid's uniform, and my sympathy evaporated. The real test came during the reception. I was standing near the gift table, admiring the elegant place settings Barbara had insisted on, when I overheard her talking to her sister, Margaret. Of course the ceremony was lovely, Barbara was saying, her voice slightly higher than usual. Though Sarah's dress was a bit, well, you know how those boutique shops can be, not quite up to our standards. I cleared my throat, making both women jump. Actually, Barbara, I've been meaning to ask you about family standards, particularly about your mother's preferred shopping destinations in the East End. I recently found some fascinating old receipts. The color drained from Barbara's face. Sarah, I was just telling Margaret how lovely you look. Margaret looked between us, confused. Barbara, what's she talking about? Nothing. Barbara grabbed her sister's arm. Let's check on the catering, shall we? As they hurried away, James appeared at my side. What was that about? Mother seems unusually jumpy today. I patted my purse. Let's just say your mother and I have reached a new understanding of family history. Before he could press further, Michael clinked his glass, calling everyone to their seats for dinner. Barbara had arranged the seating chart, and I noticed with amusement that she placed me at the main table, a stark contrast to previous family functions where I had often found myself relegated to distant corners. The toast began, and I watched Barbara carefully as various family members stood to speak. She'd always been proud of her supposed heritage, frequently regaling everyone with tales of the Thompson family's historic social prominence. Now she sat silent, barely touching her champagne. When it was my turn to speak, I saw her tense. But I kept my toast simple and heartfelt, focusing on Michael and Emma's love story. Only Barbara caught the slight emphasis when I mentioned how proud I was that my son had grown up valuing character over social status. During the dinner service, Emma's father, Charles, a self-made businessman like me, leaned over to chat. Sarah, something's different. I've never seen Barbara so accommodating. Usually she's making those little comments about new money and proper breeding. I smiled, sipping my wine. Sometimes people discover their own backgrounds aren't quite what they claimed. Oh, Charles raised an eyebrow. Do tell. I would, I said, loud enough for Barbara to hear from 3 seats away. But some stories are best kept within the family. Right, Barbara? She nearly choked on her salmon. The evening progressed, and I noticed Barbara growing increasingly agitated as more relatives arrived for the reception. These were the people she'd spent decades impressing with her fabricated family history, the social circle she cultivated so carefully. During the father-daughter dance, she cornered me by the cake table. What do you want? She hissed, her perfect composure cracking. Money? A position on the country club board? I looked at this woman who had tormented me for 25 years and felt strangely calm. I want you to understand something, Barbara. I've spent years watching you tear people down because they weren't born into what you considered the right social class. You've made countless snide remarks about my pub, my background, my parenting, all while sitting on a throne of lies about your own mother's origins. She worked hard to give me a better life. Barbara whispered, and for the first time, I heard real emotion in her voice. She wanted more from me than she had. Just like I wanted more from Michael, I said quietly. The difference is, I never pretended to be something I'm not. I built my business honestly, raised my son to be proud of who he is, not some invented version of himself. Barbara's hands trembled as she straightened her expensive pearl necklace, another family heirloom that probably had its own secret history. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I watched Michael twirling Emma on the dance floor, both of them radiant with happiness. Nothing as long as things change from here on out. No more digs about my background. No more attempts to humiliate me at family functions. And most importantly, no more poisoning my son's mind about social class and proper families. And if I agree, then your mother's story stays between us. Though personally, I think Eleanor Davies' real story, building herself up from nothing, creating opportunities for her family, is far more impressive than the fiction you've been selling. The music changed to a slower song, and I saw James leading Emma's mother onto the dance floor. Barbara watched them, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming nervously on the tablecloth. "You know," I said softly, "your mother would probably be ashamed of how you've treated people. From what I've learned about Eleanor Davies, she believed in hard work and treating everyone with respect." Barbara flinched as if I'd slapped her. "You don't know anything about my mother. I know she worked 16-hour days at that laundry to put you through finishing school. I know she changed her name and created a new history so you could have opportunities she never had. But I don't think she meant for you to use those opportunities to become someone who looks down on others who are exactly where she started." Tears welled in Barbara's eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. A lifetime of maintaining appearances doesn't crumble in a single day. "I'll keep your secret," I continued. "But in return, I want you to remember something every time you're tempted to make another cutting remark about someone's background or social status. Remember that your own mother was exactly like them, hardworking, ambitious, and worthy of respect." Barbara nodded slightly, her perfect posture sagging just a fraction. "And the uniform. Consider it forgotten, as long as you remember our new understanding." She straightened her shoulders, years of social training taking over. "Well then, I suppose we should rejoin the party. People will talk if we're absent too long." As she walked away, I noticed something different in her step. The usual air of superiority was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like uncertainty. Sometimes the biggest blow to someone's pride isn't exposing their secrets to others. It's forcing them to face those secrets themselves. I touched the envelope in my purse one last time, then went to find my husband. It was time to celebrate our son's happiness and perhaps the beginning of a new chapter in our complicated family story. The next morning brought chaos to the Thompson Beach house. Diana had barricaded herself in the master suite, refusing to come out while Patricia helped move Lily and Jack into their rightful rooms. The other family members who had arrived for the annual gathering watched the drama unfold with varying degrees of shock and fascination. Cooper, now 20 and home from college, was particularly interested in the revelations about his grandfather's will. "So Pop made sure everyone would be treated equally?" he asked, helping Jack arrange his action figures on the dresser in their new room. "That's pretty cool." "Your grandfather was a wise man," I said, watching my stepson and son interact. Despite Deanna's best efforts, Cooper had always been a loving big brother to his younger siblings. Around noon, Thomas's older brother Richard arrived with his family. Diana immediately summoned him to her room, probably hoping her eldest son would find a legal loophole to preserve her control over the property. Instead, Richard, who had followed in his father's footsteps as a lawyer, emerged from her room looking grim. "The trust is ironclad," he announced to the assembled family. Dad knew exactly what he was doing. "But the tradition," Diana began, finally emerging from her self-imposed exile. "The tradition," Richard interrupted, "was supposed to be about family unity, not exclusion. Dad made that clear in his letters to me." "Letters?" Thomas asked. Richard pulled out an envelope of his own. He left these with his personal effects to be opened if there was ever a dispute about the beach house. "He knew exactly what might happen, Mom. He watched how you treated Amanda and her children all these years." Diana sank into a chair, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. "Harold never said anything. He shouldn't have had to," I said quietly. "A grandmother shouldn't need legal documents to treat all her grandchildren with love and respect." The room fell silent. Even Diana's most steadfast supporters, the aunts and cousins who had always followed her lead, looked uncomfortable. "What happens now?" Patricia asked. "Now," Thomas said, taking my hand, "we honor Dad's wishes. The beach house belongs to all the grandchildren, and they all deserve to feel welcome here." Diana looked around the room, perhaps realizing for the first time how many people had been hurt by her actions over the years. Her eyes lingered on Lily, who was curled up in a window seat reading, finally comfortable in her own family's home. I may have been wrong," she said softly. Coming from Diana Thompson, this was practically a full confession. "Maybe," Richard suggested, "it's time to start some new traditions, ones that bring people together instead of pushing them apart." That evening, something unprecedented happened. Diana asked to help Lily and Jack build a sandcastle. Her movements were stiff and awkward, but she sat in the sand with them, showing them how to pack it properly for the strongest foundations. "My father, your great-grandfather, taught me this," she told them. "He said everything important starts with a strong foundation." I watched from the deck, thinking about Harold Thompson and his careful planning. He'd built a foundation too, one designed to protect his family's future from the very prejudices that threatened to tear it apart. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Thomas asked, joining me with 2 glasses of wine. "Just thinking about your father," I said. "He must have known this day would come." "Dad was always playing the long game," Thomas agreed, "but I think he'd be happy now. Look." Down on the beach, Diana was actually laughing as Jack demonstrated his moat engineering skills by dating channels for the incoming tide. Lily was decorating the castle walls with shells, while Cooper played lifeguard, making sure his younger siblings didn't get too close to the water. "It's amazing what a little truth can do," I mused. "And a lot of love," Thomas added. "You could have used those documents to punish Mom, but instead, we're building sandcastles," I finished. "Sometimes the best revenge is showing people a better way." As the sun set over the ocean, I thought about all the summers ahead of us. Summers where my children wouldn't have to wonder if they belonged, where they could simply enjoy being part of a family. All of it built on the foundation of one man's foresight and another woman's courage to use the truth not for destruction, but for healing. Diana might never be the warm, doting grandmother of storybooks, but as I watched her help my children place a seashell flag atop their sandcastle, I saw something changing. Sometimes the strongest foundations are built not on sand, but on second chances. I always knew Barbara Thompson despised me for marrying her precious son James 25 years ago. But I never thought she'd stoop so low on what was supposed to be the happiest day of our family's life, my son Michael's wedding. The morning started peacefully enough at the luxurious country club Barbara had insisted on booking. My husband James and I had offered to split the wedding costs, but Barbara wouldn't hear of it. A Thompson wedding must uphold certain standards, she declared, her perfectly manicured hand dismissively waving away our offer. I was in the bridal suite, helping Michael's fiancée, Emma, with her final preparations when Barbara burst in carrying 2 garment bags. Her silver hair was styled in its usual immaculate updo, and she wore that smug smile I'd grown to dread over the years. "Emma, darling, you look absolutely divine," Barbara cooed, air-kissing her future daughter-in-law's cheeks. Then she turned to me, her warm expression freezing into something altogether different. "Sarah, I brought your outfit for today." My stomach clenched. I'd already shown her the elegant navy blue dress I'd chosen months ago, a proper mother of the groom dress that had cost more than I cared to admit. "What do you mean, Barbara? I have my dress." "Oh, that won't do at all," she said, unzipping one of the garment bags. "This is much more appropriate for your position." The blood drained from my face as she pulled out a black and white uniform, the kind worn by the serving staff at the country club. Emma gasped beside me. "Barbara," I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. "What exactly are you implying?" She smiled that poison-sweet smile she perfected over 2 decades of passive-aggressive warfare. "Well, dear, let's be honest. You've never quite fit in with the Thompson family, have you? All these years serving drinks at that little pub of yours while the rest of us attended charity galas and society functions. I thought you might be more comfortable in something familiar." 25 years of snide remarks about my working-class background, my career choices, and my supposed lack of breeding crashed over me like a tidal wave. But this time, something was different. This time, I had ammunition of my own. "Mrs. Thompson," Emma stepped forward, her white dress rustling. That's completely inappropriate. Sarah is Michael's mother. Oh, is she? Barbara's eyes glittered with malice. Well, that's debatable, isn't it? A real Thompson mother would have given her son the proper upbringing he deserved, not let him run wild in that public some common. Stop. My voice cut through her tirade like a knife. I reached for my purse, fingers closing around the envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. You want to talk about who really belongs in this family, Barbara? Let's talk. She faltered slightly, probably thrown by my calm demeanor. Usually her attacks left me fighting back tears or stammering in embarrassment. But not today. What are you talking about? Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. It's interesting you should question my place in this family, I said, pulling out the envelope, because I recently made some fascinating discoveries about the Thompson bloodline. Barbara's face paled slightly. Whatever nonsense you're about to spew. Mom, Michael appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tuxedo. He froze, taking in the scene, his grandmother holding a maid's uniform, his fiancé in distress, and me standing there with an envelope that could change everything. Michael, sweetheart, Barbara recovered quickly. I was just helping your mother choose something more suitable. By giving her a servant's uniform. Michael's voice was ice cold. Grandmother, what the hell are you doing? Language, dear, Barbara scolded automatically. I'm simply trying to maintain certain standards. Like the standards your mother maintained, I interrupted softly. Barbara's head snapped toward me so fast I heard her neck crack. What did you say? Your mother, Eleanor Thompson, the woman you've held up as the pinnacle of societal breeding for the past 25 years. The woman whose legacy you've used to torment me about my common background. I opened the envelope slowly. Would you like to know what I found when I started researching the Thompson family history? Sarah, Barbara's voice held a warning note. Whatever you think you know. Mom? Michael moved closer, his expression concerned. What's going on? I looked at my son, my beautiful, kind-hearted boy who'd somehow grown up unspoiled despite his grandmother's best efforts to turn him into a society snob. Then I looked at Barbara, who had spent 25 years making me feel like an imposter in my own family. Your precious mother Eleanor wasn't born a society woman at all, I said quietly. She was born Eleanor Davies, daughter of a laundress in the East End. She changed her name and invented a new background before marrying your father. I have her original birth certificate right here. The color drained completely from Barbara's face. You're lying. I also have newspaper clippings about her mother, your grandmother, who ran a successful laundry service. She put herself through night school, built a business from nothing. Actually, she reminds me quite a bit of myself. I smiled. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that the great Thompson matriarch was actually a working-class woman who reinvented herself. Just like me, minus the lies. Barbara swayed slightly, her perfectly manicured hand gripping the back of a chair. Where? How did you? Digital archives are wonderful things, I said. All those old records just waiting to be discovered. Your mother may have been able to hide her past in the 1950s, but these days, the truth is just a few clicks away. Mrs. Thompson. Emma stepped forward, concern written across her face. Are you all right? You look a bit pale. Barbara ignored her, her eyes fixed on the envelope in my hands. Does anyone else know? Not yet, I said quietly. That depends entirely on what happens next. The implied threat hung in the air between us. 25 years of social climbing, of lording her supposed superior breeding over everyone, of making me feel less than, all built on a foundation of lies. Mom, Michael's voice was gentle but firm. Put the uniform away. Now. Barbara moved mechanically, stuffing the black and white uniform back into its garment bag. Her hands were shaking. Sarah, she said, and for the first time in 25 years, I heard real fear in her voice. Perhaps we could discuss this, privately? I looked at the woman who had tried to humiliate me on my son's wedding day, who had spent decades making me feel like I didn't belong. And I felt something unexpected, pity. Yes, I said finally, we can discuss this privately, after the wedding. For now, I reached for the second garment bag she'd brought in. What's in here? Barbara flinched. It's the mother of the groom dress I had made. For you. I unzipped the bag to reveal a stunning deep blue gown, exactly my size. A peace offering. Or had she planned to present it as a reward if I agreed to play servant for the day? "Thank you," I said, "but I'll wear the dress I chose myself. Now, shall we focus on making this a beautiful day for Michael and Emma?" The look of desperate relief on Barbara's face almost made me laugh. Almost. As she hurried from the room, probably to repair her makeup and compose herself, Michael turned to me. "Mom, what just happened?" I tucked the envelope back into my purse. "Just a long overdue conversation about family history, sweetheart. Now, shouldn't you be getting ready? You're getting married in an hour." He hugged me tightly, whispering, "You're the strongest person I know." I hugged him back, thinking about Eleanor Thompson May Davies, another strong woman who had fought her way up from nothing. The only difference was I'd done it honestly. Emma touched my arm. "Sarah, that envelope will stay closed," I assured her. "As long as certain people remember that family is about love, not social status." As I helped Emma with her veil, I smiled, thinking about the reception to come. Something told me Barbara Thompson would be on her best behavior, not just today, but for many years to come. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving cold dishes, it's knowing exactly when to keep them in reserve. The wedding ceremony was beautiful, despite the tension simmering beneath the surface. Barbara sat rigidly in the front row, flinching every time I caught her eye. Her husband George kept glancing between us, clearly sensing that something had shifted in the carefully maintained power dynamic of our family. As Michael and Emma exchanged their vows, I noticed Barbara dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. For a moment, I almost felt guilty of the envelope burning a hole in my purse. Then I remembered the maid's uniform, and my sympathy evaporated. The real test came during the reception. I was standing near the gift table, admiring the elegant place settings Barbara had insisted on, when I overheard her talking to her sister, Margaret. "Of course the ceremony was lovely," Barbara was saying, her voice slightly higher than usual. "Though Sarah's dress was a bit, well, you know how those boutique shops can be. Not quite up to our standards." I cleared my throat, making both women jump. "Actually, Barbara, I've been meaning to ask you about family standards, particularly your mother's preferred shopping destinations in the East End. I recently found some fascinating old receipts." The color drained from Barbara's face. "Sarah, I was just telling Margaret how lovely you looked." Margaret looked between us, confused. "Barbara, what's she talking about?" "Nothing." Barbara grabbed her sister's arm. "Let's check on the catering, shall we?" As they hurried away, James appeared at my side. "What was that about? Mother seems unusually jumpy today." I patted my purse. "Let's just say your mother and I have reached a new understanding about family history." Before he could press further, Michael clinked his glass, calling everyone to their seats for dinner. Barbara had arranged the seating chart, and I noticed with amusement that she'd placed me at the main table. A stark contrast to previous family functions where I'd often been relegated to distant corners. The toast began, and I watched Barbara carefully as various family members stood to speak. She had always been proud of her supposed heritage, frequently regaling everyone with tales of the Thompson family's historic social prominence. Now she sat silent, barely touching her champagne. When it was my turn to speak, I saw her tense. But I kept my toast simple and heartfelt, focusing on Michael and Emma's love story. Only Barbara caught the slight emphasis when I mentioned how proud I was that my son had grown up valuing character over social status. During the dinner service, Emma's father, Charles, a self-made businessman like me, leaned over to chat. "Sarah, something's different. I've never seen Barbara so accommodating. Usually, she's making those little comments about new money and proper breeding." I smiled, sipping my wine. Sometimes people discover their own backgrounds aren't quite what they claimed. "Oh," Charles raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." I would have said, loud enough for Barbara to hear from 3 seats away. But some stories are best kept within the family. "Right, Barbara?" She nearly choked on her salmon. The evening progressed, and I noticed Barbara growing increasingly agitated as more relatives arrived for the reception. These were the people she had spent decades impressing with her fabricated family history, the social circle she had cultivated so carefully. During the father-daughter dance, she cornered me by the cake table. "What do you want?" she hissed, her perfect composure cracking. "Money? A position on the country club board?" I looked at the woman who had tormented me for 25 years and felt strangely calm. "I want you to understand something, Barbara. I've spent years watching you tear people down because they weren't born into what you considered the right social class. You've made countless snide remarks about my pub, my background, my parenting, all while sitting on a throne of lies about your own mother's origins. She worked hard to give me a better life, Barbara whispered, and for the first time, I heard real emotion in her voice. She wanted more from me than she had. Just like I wanted more from Michael, I said quietly. The difference is, I never pretended to be something I'm not. I built my business honestly, raised my son to be proud of who he is, not some invented version of himself. Barbara's hands trembled as she straightened her expensive pearl necklace, another family heirloom that probably had its own secret history. What are you going to do? She asked. I watched Michael twirling Emma on the dance floor, both of them radiant with happiness. Nothing as long as things change from here on out. No more digs about my background. No more attempts to humiliate me at family functions. And most importantly, no more poisoning my son's mind about social class and proper families. And if I agree, then your mother's story stays between us. Though personally, I think Eleanor Davies' real story, building herself up from nothing and creating opportunities for her family, is far more impressive than the fiction you've been selling. Barbara was quiet for a long moment, watching the dancers. She was impressive, she finally said softly. Somewhere along the way, I got so caught up in maintaining the image that I forgot what she really taught me. Which was that your worth isn't in your background. It's in what you make of yourself. She turned to me, and for the first time in 25 years, I saw something like respect in her eyes. Rather like you, with that pub of yours. I smiled. High praise coming from the granddaughter of a laundress. She flinched but managed a small smile in return. I suppose I deserve that. Sarah, about the uniform today. Water under the bridge, I said, as long as we're clear about the future. Barbara nodded, then hesitated. The pub, perhaps we could stop by sometime. George has always said he misses a proper pub atmosphere. I bit back a laugh at this olive branch. You're welcome anytime. Though you might want to leave the designer handbags at home. Things can get a bit rowdy on quiz nights. For the first time that day, Barbara's laugh seemed genuine. As she walked away to join George, I felt Michael's arm slip around my shoulders. Everything okay, Mom? You and Grandmother seem to be having an intense conversation. I watched Barbara heading to the dance floor, her perfect posture slightly more relaxed than usual. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I think your grandmother and I have finally found some common ground. Common ground? You and Grandmother? He shook his head in amazement. I never thought I'd see the day. I patted my purse, feeling the envelope inside. Sometimes people just need a little reminder about what really matters in life. As the evening wore on, I noticed Barbara watching me occasionally, her expression thoughtful. Something had shifted between us, and while we'd never be best friends, perhaps we could build something better than the Cold War we'd been waging for 25 years. After all, we had more in common than either of us had realized. We were both women who understood the value of hard work, the importance of family, and now the weight of keeping certain secrets. 3 months after the wedding, I was working my usual Sunday shift at the pub when an unexpected visitor walked through the door. Barbara Thompson, dressed in what was probably her most casual outfit, though it still looked straight out of a luxury catalog, stood awkwardly in the entrance. Sarah, she nodded, clutching her designer purse like a shield. I hope I'm not interrupting. The regular customers, mostly working-class folks who'd been coming here for years, stared curiously at this clearly out-of-place woman. Not at all, I said, hiding my surprise. Have a seat at the bar. She perched carefully on a bar stool, looking around with poorly concealed fascination. It's charming. Very authentic. That's one word for it, I smiled, sliding her a menu. What brings you here, Barbara? She pulled out an old photograph from her purse and placed it on the bar. I found this while cleaning out some of Mother's things. The photograph showed a young woman in a laundry worker's uniform, standing proudly in front of a small shopfront. Her face was remarkably similar to Barbara's, though her expression held none of the artificial refinement her daughter had cultivated. Eleanor Davies, I said softly, your mother. Barbara nodded, tracing the edge of the photo. I've spent so many years trying to bury this part of our history, but after the wedding, well, I've been doing some thinking. I poured her a glass of the expensive wine we kept for special occasions, and, Mother was proud of this place, Barbara said, gesturing to the laundry shop in the photo. Just like you're proud of this pub. I never understood that kind of pride until recently. I was too busy being ashamed of where we came from. A burst of laughter came from the corner where some regulars were playing darts. Barbara jumped slightly, then forced herself to relax. Michael and Emma stopped by for dinner last week, she continued. He told me about how he used to help you here after school, learning about business from the ground up, how it taught him the value of hard work and treating everyone with respect. I smiled, remembering those days. He was a natural with the customers, always had time to chat with the elderly regulars, never complained about cleaning up spills or taking out the trash. Yes, well, Barbara cleared her throat. It seems I may have been wrong about a few things. Coming from Barbara Thompson, this was practically a full apology on bended knee. Water under the bridge, I said, refilling her wine glass. Though I notice you haven't brought George along for this visit. She actually laughed. Baby steps, Sarah. Though he's been asking questions about Mother's background since the wedding. I think it's time to tell him the truth. The whole truth. Yes. She took a deep breath. And perhaps it's time to tell others too. Mother's story, my story, it might help some people understand that background doesn't define who you are. I leaned against the bar, studying this new version of Barbara Thompson. That's quite a change of heart. Yes, well, she straightened her perfectly pressed blouse. That envelope of yours made me realize something. I've spent so many years terrified of people discovering the truth, letting that fear turn me into someone my mother probably wouldn't even recognize. Just then, Michael and Emma walked in, stopping short at the sight of Barbara at the bar. Grandmother? Michael's surprise was evident. What are you doing here? Barbara stood, smoothing her slacks. Having a drink with your mother. And I thought perhaps you might like to hear some stories about your great-grandmother. The real stories this time. Michael looked at me questioningly. I nodded, and he broke into a warm smile. I'd love that, grandmother. As they settled into a booth, Emma helped me carry over a round of drinks. Barbara pulled out the photograph again, and I heard her begin. This was Eleanor Davies, my mother. She built a business from nothing, just like your mother did. I stayed back at the bar, watching the scene unfold. The infamous Barbara Thompson, sitting in my working-class pub, proudly telling stories about her laundress mother to her grandson. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's watching someone finally face their own truth and choose to be better. I tucked the envelope, still unopened, deeper into my office drawer. I had a feeling I wouldn't be needing it anymore. After all, the truth had already done its work, transforming not just one family's dynamic, but perhaps an entire generation's understanding of what really matters. As Barbara's laugh, real and unrestrained, rang out across the pub, I smiled and turned to serve another customer. Some family traditions, it seems, are better broken than kept.